What do you do when it becomes clear that the client doesn't really understand what you mean or what it is that you're saying? Hi guys, my name is Deepak Shukla, founder at the Pearl Lemon Group. We're a business growth and development agency based in the UK, USA, as well as serving clients worldwide. And here today, in day number 81, we're here to talk about what it is that you do when it just becomes clear that the client doesn't really understand what you're saying, in spite of you trying. But before we get into it, feel free to click the link in the description below to get access to 7 additional strategies that are not shared in this training. And please do reach out to us if you need any support with your communications training. So look, fundamentally, there's going to be some times when you're explaining something to a client and the client just doesn't get it, doesn't understand, gets confused. Okay, just several variations of them not understanding happens. And there's in these instances, what's good is that there's a pretty step by step or guide. There's a good guide on what you can do when a client doesn't understand you. So you will try repeating again in a different way. Okay. So you it would involve that, I'm not. So first of all, to be honest with you, you need to, and this is about perception. This is what comes. You need to recognize, and it won't always be obvious because some clients think they understand and they don't, which is always difficult. Recognize. So you need to be able to read the room, understand what's happening, and recognize that a client doesn't understand what it is that you're actually saying. So in those instances, you want to try and repeat it again in a different way. So that's going to be really helpful. Okay, if you can try and repeat it but in a different way. Now, mastering repeating it in a different way is definitely a skill within itself. So you can make use of analogies and metaphors, if you will. So an analogy might be you saying, it's a little bit like the Premier League, you're Man City, this team's Liverpool, and you're going head to head. And to ensure that you see yourself the victory, you need to really think strategically about your line out on the pitch. So you could very, very quickly just put out who you think are your best players, but you've not considered the best players that would perform best as a team against a team like Liverpool. So therefore, you need to look at your selection versus the competition. So this is why, Frank, that not just like it's really important to strategically look at which pages we're going to build according to ultimately the competition and what they're doing. So guys, that would be an example of an analogy. It's a bit like whereas a metaphor would be that in this if you're what's the best way to describe it? Whereas a metaphor is ultimately it's a type of analogy, but the comparison doesn't necessarily need to be direct. So a metaphor could be, for example, when you're thinking about which pages to build, Frank, it's a little bit like deciding where to ultimately or which side to butter your bread upon based upon the contents of your sandwich. That's a bad example anyway, but you kind of take my point probably more strongly so with the analogy. A metaphor is a type of analogy, but repeating it again in a different way is definitely going to be a key with this. Now if that doesn't work, then you can change. Now this is always a good trick in general. Change the medium. If you're doing it with words, try and do it with voice. If you're doing it with voice, try and do it with video. If you're doing it with video, try doing it with words. So changing the medium is another way to ultimately see if that can help, because again it relates to the way that clients learn. Some people are visual, some people are audio visual, some people need it all wrapped together, but definitely changing the medium can sometimes just do the trick. Okay, so the other element is ultimately getting on the phone to them. Now, depending upon this doesn't always apply depending upon where it is that you're having this conversation anyway. If you're already on the phone, then you would stay on the phone. But fundamentally, it relates to changing the medium in a way. But getting on the phone with them is ultimately, changing it so that you have live interaction. So a voice note is not live, it's asynchronous. Email is asynchronous. Video is asynchronous. But having a live engagement to kind of talk it through is ultimately something else that you could do. The other element is that you could ask them which part is a struggle, because it is when a client doesn't understand you, especially if you're trying to teach something, then you need to help them feel safe to be able to say, you know what, I appreciate the explanation, but I still don't get this Manchester City outfield thing and how it relates to like my selection of pages. Like I just don't get it. So asking them which part is a struggle is useful, because then you can identify which part you need to tweak specifically, and that may therein lie the solution. If you're saying, Frank, well, you know what, I can see that my explanation isn't that great, and this is another point: be self-deprecating. So you never assume that the failure is on the part of the audience or the listener. Always assume extreme ownership, Jocko Willing. Always assume it's your problem if the client doesn't understand you because you're not explaining it well enough. That's always forever the rule when it comes to dialogue, that it's always your fault if the other person doesn't understand it. And the way that you can make them feel safe to share their vulnerability, to demonstrate that it's okay they don't understand, is to be self-deprecating. And you need to use expressions such as, you know what, I apologize, I'm not making this clear enough, I'm really sorry, I can see now that my metaphor or my analogy just wasn't that useful, let me try something different, I'm so sorry, I'm not communicating this effectively, I think, let me have another go. So being self-deprecating, blaming oneself, is going to lead you to a much more productive dialogue. So these are the elements that you can get involved in. If all of that fails, you can, you can get someone else to help out. You can get, Frank, I see that I'm not explaining this very well, and it might be because my grasp on this specifically isn't the best. Let me get Deepak in, because he's the expert when it comes to this type of technical content strategy. So hang on, Deepak, do you want to come in? So asking someone else to help out, especially if they're on the call, sometimes this person will often just come in and have a go. But the fundamentals of this is getting someone else to help out or giving someone else a go might lead you to where you want to go, which is getting the communication up to a point where the client understands everything. And all of this, again, comes down to perception, active listening, be mindful of how they're responding, look for what's happening in their eyes and the way that they twitch and how they nod. Do they understand, or are they feigning or faking that they understand? Are they getting a bit confused by bits of it? Because a lot of the time clients won't say, or a lot of the time they'll think they understand, but then a response that they'll give will demonstrate that, well, maybe they don't. When they say, oh, it's a little bit like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I get that. I think that makes sense. So, there's these little tells that you can identify that might identify that they don't actually understand. So there you have it, guys. These are the 6 ways that or the 6.5 ways that you can ultimately adjust based upon it becoming clear that a client doesn't understand you.